Hi, I'm Heather Strotter, and this is A Place of Yes. In each episode, we have honest conversations about grief, the messy parts, the unexpected moments, and the ways we begin to heal. Through heartfelt stories and expert advice, my hope is to offer you comfort, connection, and a reminder that you don't have to navigate this alone. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Feinglos, a grief educator, author, and founder of Grieve Leave. Rebecca turned a year of personal loss into a movement that helps people make space for grief in everyday life, not by stepping away from the world, but by living more fully within it. We talk about what it means to rest, to set boundaries when grief becomes your work, and to find the balance between helping others and holding your own pain. Rebecca also shares how her Sad Hours gatherings are creating community for people who simply need a place to show up as they are. It's honest, energizing, and full of perspective. And I'm grateful to share it with you. I am here today, and you can probably hear in my voice how giddy I am with excitement over today's guest. Rebecca Feinglos is here with me again today. She was a season 2 guest, and there's something kind of magical that happens, I think, in the world of grief, which sounds weird to some people, but I think if you stop and pause and really think about it, it happens to so many people, right? Like, you live with this heaviness when you've lost someone or multiple people that are important to you. And you've got to find a way through, because the alternative is just, I don't know, sucks, right? So Rebecca and I, when we first met, had so many fun conversations and touched on so many different topics that I wanted to do it again. And I wanted to attempt to be a little bit more focused on certain items. So Rebecca, welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Heather, hi. It's so great to see you again. I want to just hang out with you in person and grab a drink and just chat together. But this is a close second. We could do this.
We've got to do that first one too, though. I think that would be fun.
I know. I would love that.
A proper introduction is that you are an author, a grief educator, and the founder of Grieve Leave, which is actually where I want to start part of our conversation. But first,
Cool.
We're doing something new this season where we start off, before we go in too deep and too heavy right away, we start with sort of a place of yes question. And I'm going to ask you, I will answer it first. I'll give you a time to kind of think about it. But what is something you have said yes to recently? My example is for today, and I've had all kinds of examples. Sometimes they're big things, sometimes they're little. But I have been thinking a lot this week about a spin class I took 2 years ago, where the instructor said, sometimes to protect your yes, you have to say no. And I have been thinking about that. So my thing that I've said yes to has sort of been my peace. So I have said no to a couple things this week because it just was going to be too much. And not even related to grief, just too much. I just wanted to be home some nights on my couch. So my yes is actually a no. So that means it's open for anything. So what have you said yes to recently?
Okay, but wait, I was about to say something similar that I'm like, oh my God, Heather, I feel like I say yes to so many things because maybe this is the irony. I think there's a lot going on in the world that is incredibly depressing and can get me very down, can get anyone very down. When I'm someone who, throughout my entire career before Grieve Leave, was in the public sector. So I worked in government and in education. And right now, as things are really getting me down, I'm like, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed. My gut is to say no to doing more things because it doesn't feel as impactful. So I was actually thinking about this tension of the no's to get to a yes, of I've been really thinking through what ways can I make an impact when the world feels overwhelming? Where are the biggest places that I can make a difference? And for me, it's thinking really locally here in North Carolina, where I live. And that looks like gathering friends together who also want to see change in our world. And last night, I hosted an event that was an absolute joy. So I said yes to hosting that event and named the tension of let's be here together. Let's say yes to celebrating in this moment while also recognizing that damn, there's a lot going on that is really heavy right now in the world.
I think that balance is so important, right? Like, and it's really choosing the yeses and also recognizing, I love what you said, and then we'll kind of segue into what we're here to talk about. But I love that piece of when things feel so huge and overwhelming, right? Because like sometimes we wake up in the morning and I know I would just want to bury my head in the sand. I'm like, I can't take it. But we can step back and, like you said, focus locally. Like, what can we do? What can our friends do? What can our like-minded people, what can we do? So I love that. I love that you did that. I actually saw some of that on Instagram since I stalk you. And it and it looked
In
awesome.
like the best way.
in a non-dangerous way.
You know what, Heather, you can stalk me however you want because I love you and I am so comfortable with that and it's fine. It was really fun last night.
It looked really fun. It was great. So in prepping for this conversation and thinking about some of the different topics and really thinking about Grieve Leave, because we touched on that last time we talked, but it's something that has stayed with me because I thought about what a big step that was. And for people who didn't listen to the previous episode, Grieve Leave is this it was something Rebecca did because she needed to figure out how to grieve and who she was with these losses. And you're kind of encouraging people to do that however they can, like to face your grief. So last night I read your HuffPost article again that you had really,
thank you.
that kind of, it went through the whole thing. And one of the things you wrote, and this is where I thought would be a good place to start, was that you realized you could not rest and grieve and work. And when I thought about those three things, those are the three big things that people, when they've lost someone, kind of get trapped in. But the thing that they usually get rid of is grief, right? Most people.
Or rest.
Exactly. Like you either don't rest because you keep going because you avoid it, or you don't let yourself grieve and you bury it down, down, down. Like you push it down and you just work. But you flipped that. You said, you know what? I'm going to take a year. So can you walk me and your audience through, and this audience, how you did that? Like, how did you come to that decision and how did you make it happen?
First of all, thank you. And thank you for reading that piece. I love that piece. It is I think the longest form, like free form piece that I've gotten to do so far until my book comes out that I'm working on. But that this piece really captures like, oh my God, I felt so overwhelmed and here's what I did about it. But I want to say first and foremost, like, it is not my recommendation that the average person quit their job for a year. Like, that's insane. And frankly, comes from a place of privilege that I could even do that.
Think about it. Yep.
Oh my God. Right? Like if I were not extremely privileged to have the financial resources to be able to make that decision in the first place, of course people shut out grief and rest first because they cannot take their foot off the gas pedal for work. It is not a feasible choice to make. And it's just not realistic. For me, because I was in a very privileged position to be able to do that, my mindset was, I'm going to take my foot off the gas pedal at work. I am going to stop the professional path that I'm on to invest in these other two buckets, to grieve especially, and also to rest that year. And in doing so, I want to create something with it that helps other people. And something that I said often in that first year was, I quit my job so you don't have to, right? So you don't feel like take some of the learning that I'm able to do in this particular year, share on the internet, like maybe it resonates with someone else, and maybe you will feel just seen enough that you can make a little more room for grief in your daily life so you don't feel so overwhelmed that you feel like you need to quit your job or you feel like you can't rest. But I have to say, first and foremost, it comes from privilege.
And that, I think, is such an important delineation. And it's funny because we talked before, like, I kind of, I was on that page, but I think that's so important for people to know that Grieve Leave as it stands now is not like, hey, everybody, quit your job and footloose and
No.
fancy free. And it's something that you were able to do. But as a result of that, you have kind of, in an odd way, and this is a place where I think we connect, we have made ourselves like our primary job in many ways now is grief. And,
Yes.
and I think that becomes this interesting switch of where when you become so comfortable and in tune with your grief, you want to help other people figure that out. And that, I think, your actual grief leave fueled that for you, correct? Like it
Totally.
opened this whole like life pivot.
I didn't even think that I could combine for myself my grief and work. And yet here we are, right? In that first year, I I had a feeling that my overwhelm of loss might resonate with someone else. Like I had a gut feeling that, man, I feel like there's no one really talking in my age range about the depth of sadness, the depth of grief that they feel when they lose a parent too young. Like there weren't enough voices out there. There were not enough voices at all talking about divorce and grief that goes hand in hand. And so yes, I had a feeling that like, okay, I think this is going to help somebody. What I did not anticipate was creating a whole company out of this. And that I literally am looking at the year, Heather, because I'm like, what year is it? That I would not have guessed that in 2025, I would have a company that would be called Grieve Leave that teaches people how to make room in their daily lives for grief, that creates safe spaces for grief with your friends, with loved ones, for young people, for whoever. That is the coolest part for me personally, is I get to rest and grieve and work now,
And there's so
maybe
much
not
of
rest.
well, restaurant. I was just gonna make a horrible joke. I was gonna say we can rest
Were you
when
going
we're
to say
dead.
rest when you
Yeah.
were dead? I knew it. I felt it. I
I
felt
was
you were going to
like,
say
"Ugh."
that.
And then I
Whoops.
figured you knew it, so then I was like, well, I might as well put it out there. But so it's so interesting to me, right? Because I think that we end up in these places and you kind of end up in this like it's not A to B. It's like this wiggly line. So your grief leave when you started, and correct me if I've got this wrong, but like you really were thinking it's going to be like this year of like rest and travel, and you wanted to go places where you could kind of connect with your dad and figure things out. I love that you were going to go to Mexico, or you did go to Mexico on the Day of the
I did.
Dead, like
I sure did.
those type of things. And in back to that article, there was the one you kind of opened with this story of this couple who like did not know what to say when you said this. And they were kind of like, well, you should go skiing in Switzerland or like or hiking in the Alps or whatever it was. But people, how did you work through that? Because I'm sure people were like, what is this woman talking about? Right? Like,
Oh my God. I mean, you have to understand that I am the last person that anybody who knew me would have expected to get off this very linear professional path that I was on, right? Like I was type A achiever, I'm going to be president one day, girly. And, I still have a master's from the University of Chicago, undergrad at Duke. I mean, very accomplished academically and professionally. And to make the choice to just get off the path that I was on, this robust professional career in government, in public service that I was incredibly proud of, to get off that path and say, you know what? I am going to go blog for a year and I'm going to cry and think about grief. People thought I was absolutely insane.
did they think you were
And
having like a breakdown? Like, I mean, were people like, hey, what is she doing? Or like,
yeah.
fully?
Absolutely. 100%. And I think also, I mean, people were worried about me, right? Like to blow up my marriage in the way that I did and to do it pretty darn publicly, to have lost both of my parents, my mom so young and my dad so suddenly, and talk about it publicly, that shocked people. And I would say I had to like basically make new groups of friends and find new mentors in my life, because a lot of my friends, I learned who my closest friends really were, who were ready to support me and saw that there was a chance to really help people through this, whether it was a mental breakdown at the beginning. I don't actually think it was. Like, I think I approached this with a mindset of like, I want to do this to help people. I'm going to write and think and explore this idea of grief with the intent of doing it publicly so that other people learn from it. Like, that is me. I'm a public servant at heart. I'm an educator at heart. I mean, that is what I had spent my career doing. And so, yeah, people were like, what the hell is happening right now? And being at parties, which is how I opened that HuffPost piece, was like parties with my old crew, parties with people I'd rolled with previously or friends of friends who are like, oh, how lovely that you're going to take a year off and go travel. Like, you should go skiing in the Alps. And I'm like, that's not the vibe of what this year is going to be. So they didn't get it. And that's okay.
It's interesting because I think, I am considerably older than you. And I think about like how, like the first chunk of my grief journey, right? Like, and it's so different than what I'm doing now. And I would say it was different for a decade, just because this kind of thing didn't exist. And I think that's why I'm so like connected to it and so into it, because I started my grief journey in that kind of like your kind of blogs and these conversations. They weren't there. And if they were there, they were happening like privately, not publicly. No one really grieved publicly. Or at least that I knew of. Like, when Jake died, I was 35. I had, like, Facebook was sort of a new thing. Like, maybe I had like 70 friends that I knew from growing up or something. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't what it was now. So it just, you had no choice, or I felt like I had no choice. I'm sure other people did do it differently. But I think part of what is so magical about the work that you're doing in this time period, again, trying to find the good in all things that aren't always great, is this, is that the ability, and not just the privilege of it, but the thought, like the existence to be able to publicly grieve, like you said, and publicly blog and write about it so that someone like me at that time would have found a blog and been like, wait, her words are what I'm thinking, or her words are my words, and maybe I can respond and we can connect, or I can follow this blog. Like, I just think that is so great. You know what I mean? So
Thank you.
I don't know that, like, I don't know how to use the words, but like, I almost look up to you because I just think that
You made me cry. Stop.
it's my job.
No, I like making people cry, Heather. No, absolutely not. But you know what? I feel like it's also full circle though, because we only like shut grief out of the public space, the public square, your neighborhood, your community. We only shut out grief in the last, like, I don't know, 150 years, 200 years, probably less, because it's such a like a puritanical vibe of, no, I must be proper, grief, and like grief
Like,
becoming
there's no
a failure,
place for
death.
it.
Or like death becoming failure, that like, oh, this person died, our medical miracles couldn't save them. They're dying in a hospital now. They're not dying at home. So no one is seeing your agony in the ways that they used to see your grief up close and personal when your neighbor died at home and you knew that his wife was grieving because you saw her crying.
And you could hear her crying, or like, yes.
Hear her.
Yeah.
And so I am an optimist about social media and the internet, for all of the dangers too. I get it, but I think it helps us stay connected about things now that are so innately human, like grief. It allows us to have a public square again, a public space to talk about these things that, damn, it it used to be so out in the open. It is so human to grieve. So human. And you don't know that that person in the car next to you is grieving. You can't hear them wailing. You can't, but you can talk about it on the internet. I can video myself talking about it,
I
write
love
about
that connection, and I have never thought of it that way, right? Because I always
Mm.
think about, like, in other cultures and in other countries, grief is more open, right? Like, and how isolated we have made it. But it's true, if you go back far enough, even
Not even
here.
that far,
Yeah,
you
like,
know?
but even here, it was just a more.
Totally.
And it is, and that's the one thing that is, like, there's a few themes that just come out in my conversations, and one of them is, it's gonna happen to all of us. We are
Mhm.
going to die, A, but B, we're gonna that's the way it's how it's set up, like, we are going to lose people, and whether we lose them suddenly and tragically and unexpectedly and, quote, unquote, "in wrong order," like I will say about Jake, like, I mean, any of
Sure.
those things. But even if you lose people under the best of circumstances, if you lose your parents when they are 90
Right.
years old and you had this great it's still loss.
There's never a good time
No,
to, like,
it's
go
never so
through.
it's we're all gonna go through it, so I love this idea that exists now for some people where we can do this kind of publicly, and we can do this together, and we can, and everything I say, not everyone's gonna resonate with, but if there's a little piece, and if there's a piece of what they hear from you, then that just kind of helps people. I want
Totally.
right? Like, it just makes us not so alone, and we shouldn't be alone at this stuff, in my
I
thoughts.
totally think so, and that also means that our not everything we put out on the internet is gonna resonate with everybody.
And that's
Like,
okay, like, that's how
and
it
that's
works, yeah.
totally okay. Like, I have some pretty dark humor, pretty dry humor that, comes out on Grieve Leave, and that is great for some folks, and for folks that does not resonate with, that is okay. It's truly okay, right? You can't in what we share, publicly, I know that it is not going to resonate with
With
everyone,
everybody.
and because it just can't.
I want to circle back to kind of when we first started talking about Grieve Leave, and you were kind of saying, like, "Hey, I'm not telling people to take a year off. I understand that people can't." What are some things, and I know that you have resources out there, but what would you say to the people listening right now? What is something that people can, like, intentionally do as Grieve Leave? Do you know what I mean? Like, to kind
Yeah.
of give themselves that space.
Yeah, I feel like taking a grieve leave doesn't mean quitting your job for a year. Doesn't even necessarily mean taking a few weeks off work, if you even have that kind of luxury. I think grieve leave is even beyond basic bereavement leave of 3 to 5 days, which is typical in America. I did not have that at all, by the way. I had no bereavement leave in my job, and I had to totally use up all my vacation days. But anyway, that's a different conversation. A grieve leave can look like taking 5 minutes to listen to your person's favorite song in the car. We were talking about you don't know that person next to you is in traffic is grieving. They might be listening to their dead dad's favorite song, and that might be their 5 minutes of quote unquote grieve leave, of just getting into their grief on their way home from work after a long damn week. And they can take those 5 minutes. You can kind of leave into your grief in the best way. Make space for it. Think about your person. Sing the song, cry, laugh, whatever dance. Maybe it's a happy song. And take that space intentionally. That's what a grief leave can look like. Let's say you have kids and you are like, I don't have time to go on a grief retreat, right? I think
Yep, yep.
maybe when you hear grieve leave, you think, oh, I'm gonna go pay lots of money to go on a grief retreat somewhere. Not necessarily. Maybe you take your kids to the park and you sit on a bench and you're watching them. And maybe in those 20 minutes, you are intentionally remembering moments of you and your parents. Maybe you are intentionally remembering a moment of the friend that you lost, or the child that you lost, or someone that you lost. But you are doing that with, but you can create space wherever you are. I think that is what grieve leave looks like.
And that to me, like all those examples that you just shared, like I literally got chills because
Mm.
that is such an important takeaway for everybody. Even someone like me who I think lives a pretty like publicly grievy life and has done my work in grief, those moments are exactly what it is about. And I love those examples because I do think it's the exact opposite of what so many of us are conditioned to do, which is to push it down.
Mm.
And this is not pushing
Mm.
it down. This is saying like, "Hey, I don't." Because I think in this country, and I'm curious what you think about this, I think we have currently, like, there's you either push it down, you don't deal with it, you're sort of very linear, like, "Okay, I've done this, and now I'm done, and I'm done grieving," and put a bow on it and be done.
Yay
Or
me, 5
yay,
stages,
5
all
stages, all done,
finished.
check, check, check. But the other piece, though, and I struggled with this in my early years because a couple times, like, I would be taking Ethan to, like, Wave Riders or a different, like, grief not therapy, but, like, just different grief groups,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that looked very different too. That looked like a lot of people sitting in a circle talking about how they don't get off the couch, they cry
Yep.
all day, they
We
don't get
talked
out of
about
bed,
this. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just that's not it either. So I think
No, not necessarily. Yeah.
giving these examples of like, "Hey, give yourself 10 minutes." Maybe you give yourself the first 10 minutes when you wake up every day and you lock in to a memory, and maybe that memory makes you cry and feel really sad one day, but then the timer goes off and you get up. Like, you kind of figure
Yeah.
out a way to or at the park with your kids, or on the way home from the park with your kids, you tell a story about your mother, their grandmother, and you know what I mean?
Beautiful.
Like
It's
those
it's
things.
creating space in those tiny little moments, and even I feel like one particular environment where the average person in America is like, "Oh, I have to push my grief down. I can't possibly make space for my grief here," would be at work, right? Like, the examples that you just gave are all kind of outside this work setting where it's like, "Oh, okay, I'm allowed if I have any permission, any space to grieve at all, it cannot possibly be at work." I think that is the mindset that we have built. And yet I would challenge listeners to think about places they could go on, like a tiny little grieve leave, create space for grief at work. That might look like intentionally putting up a picture of your loved one in your workspace on purpose. Put one up, and so that your colleagues might ask you about them, so that you see their photo, and when you are feeling overwhelmed in a particular moment by your grief, but you didn't see it coming in a very inconvenient time, like during a meeting, you can look at their picture, you can give yourself a minute to think about them. If you're shedding a couple tears, it's okay, and then keep going with your day. You are very intentionally making space for grief in your workday. Maybe that looks like taking some notes in your notes app or a journal when your grief feels overwhelming in a given moment, instead of pretending like it's not happening, trying to shut it out for the whole workday, and then you feel 10 times overwhelmed later. Like,
Well,
make space,
and that
you know?
comes out sometimes, right? So if we're talking about being productive at work or getting our things done, if you are like letting your bad headspace take over, then what are you doing likely? You're not being as productive at work. You're snapping at your colleagues. You know what I mean? Like there is
Totally.
this whole other way where like it just what you say makes great sense. And I love the idea, right? Like how often do people have pictures of people in their office, right? So have a very intentional picture. And I love that we've talked about this before, and I know I talk about this all the time, like, society also, like, wants to not talk about the people we've lost. When we have
Mm,
lost people, right, like, I'm sure, like, you love to talk about your dad and share a memory with him, or, I
totally.
loved even, like, when Diane Keaton passed away, and you kind of
Ugh.
that, like,
Ugh.
whole reference to, like, your mom, and that whole piece I thought was so beautiful, right? Because at our core, what do we wanna do? We wanna continue connecting with our people. And I just
I
think
oh my God, 100%. Also, thank you for saying that about the Diane Keaton it's so funny. I assume you feel this way too. Like, my grief still surprises me. I'm saying still, like, I guess it makes sense that my grief surprises me because my dad died 5 years ago, but my mom died, I'm literally, again, looking at the year, 23 years ago. And my grief for her surprises me all the time. And when Diane Keaton died, I sat there being like, oh my God, I'm sure, like, I didn't know my mom as an adult. I didn't really know her as much of a person because I was so young when she died. But I imagine she would be devastated
Yeah.
that Diane Keaton died. And this is something we would talk about. And so I shared that on the internet. I shared my reflections because I wondered, like, does can anyone relate to what I'm feeling? Like this weird surprise grief, right? That kind of popped up. And it was about my mom and not my dad in that moment.
Yeah.
Though, of course, I always talk about my dad. And so he comes up.
comes in,
We're
yeah.
so close. He appears in the story.
But surprise grief, I mean, that is its own thing, right? And I think that what's what to me, and you referenced 23 years, I'm going on 15 years with no Jake.
Yeah.
And the surprise grief, I think, for lack of a better word, is the biggest surprise of grief, right? Like it's
Mm,
self-explanatory, but like you never know when those moments are coming. And I've had a few that just have taken the wind right out of me, and I did
mm,
not see it coming. And I just think that these moments, right? Like you want to be seen and you want your person to be seen no matter how much time has
mm,
passed. And I just love that there is this opportunity now where we can air these conversations where you can do your posts and your stories and I can do mine on social media, and people are either going to pass by because it doesn't, or they're going to stop and be like, "Hey, me too. I get that. Like I'm here for that." So I love that. I went on the Diane Keaton path, so I've lost my way, but
mm.
I just think that that stuff is so magical, and I love the intention of which it's back to making, like, this space for our feelings, for our thoughts.
Uh-huh. You made me think about the surprise grief when it shows up at work as like the place where we especially feel like, oh no, I can't possibly acknowledge it, but like your surprise grief is absolutely going to show up at work. It does, right? Like it in any given day, our grief is going to pop up at random moments. Hopefully it feels less intense maybe, or it feels different than it did in the earliest days of grief. But I feel very lucky that my work and my grief align in such a way that I can not only like give myself the space to grieve in the middle of my workday about Diane Keaton and my mom, but I can also then write about it kind of for work. Like it all,
Yeah, it's
I
also
have built a
connected.
life where it's really interconnected. And I know that is not the average person's experience, right?
So I wanna jump like this. I was gonna bring this up later, but I think this is the perfect segue because 'cause I've been thinking about this for myself a lot, and it's come up in several conversations this season. And it's kind of what it's in some ways, it's so positive, right? Like when we are so open with our grief, and the example you just said, like, you had this moment at work, but your work is so connected to grief that you can do an Instagram about it, you can write about it, you can put it all out there. But there becomes this line, and I feel it a little bit this week because this is the 3rd episode of the week that I've recorded. So as much as I love
Mm.
these conversations, sometimes they weigh
That's a
heavy.
lot, Heather.
It's a
That's so
lot
much in 1 week.
because it's
Mhm.
like the prep, and then it's like, inadvertently,
Mhm.
like, I'm thinking of this with Jake, or I'm thinking about
Yes.
Ethan with no brother. He's gonna turn
Yeah.
21 in January, and his brother's not here, and why that even is a thing, but it's a thing. So all of these emotions. And I try to think about how people, how you, like, how do we balance when so much of what we're doing is of service, right? Of service in this grief
Mhm.
world. How do we carve out our own times? Like, when is that time when it's just like, I'm not grieving publicly. I want to be grieving super privately. And I sometimes have a hard time with it because sometimes I'm so in my head, and I'm like, I wanna push it down because I've just
Mm.
spent 6 hours this week talking about it, and now I don't wanna talk about it anymore. I don't wanna think about it, but
Yep.
I know I need to.
Yep.
How do you,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
work
Yep.
through that?
Oh my god. Okay. Two thoughts. I'm coming back to what I do for myself in 1 second. I think this is so key to think about for anyone in a helping profession. Doctors, nurses, educators, any kind of a first responder, therapists, anyone who sees sadness regularly. For those folks, I feel like for those of us in helping professions, sometimes we do not give ourselves any leeway to make room for our own grief, that we're like so focused on other people's grief. So I just want to say, like, even if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't talk about my own grief for a living, so like I can't necessarily relate. Like, I want to encourage anyone who is in a helping profession to also think about this too. Like, what does balance look like for you? What does it look like for you to sit in sadness all the time in your 9 to 5 or your whatever your hours are? And then how do you balance that out for yourself? How do you make space for grief, maybe that you feel from work, that things are upsetting to you, and you, instead of shutting them down, how do you take grieve leave for yourself as a helper? And how do you kind of swing the pendulum back over and get respite from that heaviness all the time? So I just want to shout out to all the helpers out there who are
Absolutely.
like, no, I totally don't grieve. No, I got this. Here's how I do it for myself. My therapist encourages me to read and watch happier things in my downtime, which is very important to me. Reality TV, Love is Blind, which also often has like pop-up grief. Reality TV loves
It
grief
sneaks
stories.
it right in.
Oh my God.
You don't see it coming.
They're like, oh, by the way, my parents are dead. And I'm like, and I'm weeping. And I'm like,
I can't tell you how many books I read that I think are going to be like brain candy, and then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, we're deep into grief. We're deep into
dead
death.
kid.
Yeah,
Dead
kid.
parent.
The
I'm
dead
like,
kid theme
shit.
everywhere. I'm like, oh, come on now.
All the time. Dancing with the Stars, my escape show. Okay, Robert Irwin, dead dad. Like, it is, you can't, there is
everywhere.
no escaping grief. No. It's okay. But my therapist, she encourages me to read happier things on purpose. Shopping is a big respite for me, if I'm being totally honest with you. Like, I don't see any problem with an escape that helps you free your mind and helps you like swing back to the other side of the pendulum. We cannot stay in the heaviness all the time. However, what I will say is I love talking to people about their losses. And so at parties, I am always approached by people who want to talk about heavy stuff. At the fun party I had last night, one person was like, you're not related to Susan Feinglos, are you? Older gentleman. And of course, he knew my mom from Duke Medical Center Library when he was a physician and he was studying there. And grief pops up. People want to share their grief stories with me. You know, they know what my work is. And so even in these fun spaces, I am ready to hear other people's stories. What I have learned is to set a boundary for me and to hold those moments briefly and to say, it was so wonderful meeting you. Thank you so much. Like, thank you so much for sharing that story about my mom. That is wonderful. I am honored. I'm going to go walk around a little bit and not get stuck in the heaviness and in that moment, because I know that this event is respite for me. Like, this is not me talking about my grief all day, every day in this exact moment in time.
So that was so helpful for me personally, because I can tell you one of the things that I've been like stewing in my head this week is how am I, like, I am that person for so many people right now, right? Like, particularly around child loss. And in many ways, it's not that I enjoy it. Like, I'm happy though that I can help, right? Like when someone in our community, or not even our community, someone in the world has lost a child, their friends reach out to me, whether they know me or not. And I will say, like, last month I was on vacation with friends. We were in Portugal. It was the time of my life. Like, I actually been working on this piece that I'm writing about, like, going back to like the Heather before, right? Like, before my life was always like, you know, I always
can't wait
kind
to
of
read it.
I hope, hopefully it needs a lot of work still, but you know, it's this whole piece of like, I always talk about like, you can have extreme happiness, right? Like, you can live with this heavy grief, but they're kind of side by side. Like, you know, it's just
totally.
My grief is never gone. I can still be happy, but without it. But I was thinking about, I had these glimpses of myself when I was in Portugal. That was like the Heather before, the lighter Heather, the just like, could have been because I was pleasantly pickled for like 2 weeks. Like I was like, we were drinking wine all day and beer all day. So
Pleasantly pickled is the best thing I've ever. I need to like write that down. I need to
I
tattoo
sound like
that
I'm
on
like
myself.
85. Yeah, like I'm
I
like,
am
but it was just
obsessed with that.
so
Pleasantly
I just
pickled.
had this
So
like
freaking cute.
very steady state of just like la.
Good.
But
Good.
in the middle of it, like our dear friends who I love dearly, but they were all of a sudden, we've been drinking all day. We're like at our Airbnb, we're like hanging out, and they're like, "So a friend of ours lost a child. What should
Yeah.
I tell
Oh
them? Can
yeah.
I give them your number?" Like, and it smacked me in the face, and I
Yeah.
was like, "Of course you can." Like that is one of the things that I do. Like that, of course, like
Mm,
please share them with me. Like if it's easier for me to reach out, I will. But it sucked a little bit of the joy out of it, and it's still like I linger with it now, like and I don't have
yeah.
a great way of answering it and putting to bed because we just kept in that space, and then they shared the story and all the
Yeah.
details and then how they felt,
Yeah.
and
It happens to me too.
it
Yeah.
happens, right?
Yeah, it's what you're describing is making me specifically think about last night and how I was really feeling down when I came back from the party. I just like felt like crying, and I did. And I was sitting with my wonderful partner, my wonderful boyfriend, he's the best. And I was like, why I couldn't place what the heaviness was. And uh after like sitting with it and like talking through like why do I feel this way? What is weighing on me? Let me think through the night. And uh it was that comment from that wonderful guy about my mom. He also knew my dad too. And I just got deep into my feelings about that of, man, that man was really old. That's probably one of like these stories about my parents that randomly come up because I live in my hometown and everyone knew my parents. Those stories are going to stop. That surprise grief,
Yep,
those
there it
little
is.
moments,
Yep.
that's going to stop. And I just wept. I wept because I also, of course, I miss my parents and I wish they could have been there last night to see me speaking at this event and hosting. And that was what was weighing on me.
Yep.
I had shut it out a little bit
Yep.
so I could have respite, so I could enjoy the evening. And then it hit. And I think I say all of that to say that my life now, like you were talking about the Heather before, the Rebecca or Becky, depending on how I'm feeling, the the Rebecca before my dad's death, the Rebecca before my divorce was constantly hiding or didn't even understand or confront the grief that I had had for my mom almost my entire life. And so the Rebecca before was kind of full of crap and was putting on a performance often because I was so afraid of these really heavy feelings that I just refused to recognize were there. And so now I love the person that I am now because I feel like I have so much more fun at parties now.
Yeah.
I feel like I enjoy joy. I
Yeah.
feel joy so much more authentically now because I am also comfortable with the idea of like, I also might cry. I
And it's
also might
okay.
get reminded of
Yeah.
my grief, and it is
good.
okay. And that helps me I feel like the best version of myself that I've ever felt. And it is because my joy and my grief sit side by side together. And that is, I don't beat myself up for that.
I love that, and it's so funny because I think I spend a lot of time in that space, but every once in a while I just and I'm sure that I make this, I romanticize this, right? This version of, this version of Heather that people don't know their child died, that they don't, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
and it's funny because
Yeah.
I'm so public about it, and I've always have been. Like, Jake died, and we started Jake's Help from Heaven because I just wanted to keep his memory alive and do all these things. And I've also said, like, similar to what you just said, like, I love who I have become through this loss. Like, I just think
Yeah.
I'm like I
You're
just
pretty great.
thank you. No, but like I'm a like for someone who, like I like what I'm doing. I'm here for it. But there's funny, like there was this one picture and we were on this like rooftop bar in Lisbon and we were into the Vino Verde, like pretty strong. And
You were pleasantly pickled.
I was very pleasantly pickled. but there's this picture that like they took of the group, and then like our other friend like zoomed in on it, and he was like, "Oh my God, you look like 20 years younger, and I've never seen you so happy." And I was like, "Who is that? That's who I want to be." But that's where this whole thing kind of came, because I was like, it was just that moment, right? And in that moment, I was not Jake Sell from Heaven. I was not hosting a grief podcast. I was not the mom of a dead child. I was just a chick on vacation
Heather.
with her friends,
You're
just
just
Heather. And it just.
But I feel like your grief never actually goes away.
No,
It's
I know.
just that but
This
it's
is like
not your
therapy now. This has
whole
become
story.
therapy.
But listen, this is like grief is a part of you, Heather, but it is not your whole story. It is not like you are not just Jake's mom. You are not just Heather, the grief podcast host, Heather, the grief friend. That is not just who you are. It is a really awesome part of who you are. And you make a big difference for people with that part of you. And you are fun Heather on vacation. Like it's all just you.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right?
It's hard. Yep.
But I feel like we have built up this mindset that we are either grieving or we're not.
Yep.
That it is like a black and white view of like grieving or fine, sad or happy. But that's not how humanity works. I am always Susan and Mark Feinglos' daughter. They are always going to be dead. And I love that I am their daughter. That is the top line of my bio on Instagram is Susan and Mark's daughter. Great. And that is sprinkled into my life. It is not my entire life. Yeah. I can hold it all. So can you. Right?
Yep.
And it is not that I am not an adult orphan in this moment. I hate that language. I just find it like, it's annoying to me. But like, I also still am. Like, I'm not that, you know? It's
no,
just at
for
different
sure.
times, different parts are the cheese
the
on
primary
the pizza.
Or the, yeah.
Yeah.
Like showing through. I love this conversation because I do think this also applies, to so many of us, right? Like so many of us, especially as we like age, it's like you become defined by all of these things, whether it's your career, whether it's your grief, whether it's being a parent, being a spouse, being like whatever, and it's all these, I mean, you're right. Like it's all of, we're all of it all of the time. And it's just at different times what is more forward facing, I guess.
Totally. I hear this from my friends who are lucky enough to be parents. I am not one of them. I hear this from my mom friends all the time who are like, I am a mom now. Is that my primary identity now? Like I just it can dominate.
It's a thing. Yeah. Like it can be a part that takes over, and you're always kind of fighting for like who you are. But I think you're right. We're all of it all the time. And
we're all of it.
We're all of it. I want to make sure we hit on this, and we definitely talked about this last time, but I have been obsessed with these events that you do, right? Like, so the sad hours, like the meet and grieves, I have not been able to put them aside in my brain.
You should come.
I would like to come to one. I
one.
would like to co-host one with you. Like, talk the audience through a sad hour. Like, I love the name. I love the idea. I love all of it.
Okay. This is rooted in the fact that I, as a 30-year-old with 2 dead parents, and then as a 31-year-old with 2 dead parents and a divorce under my belt, I was like, I don't really want to go to a grief support group. I don't want to go sit in a circle in a church basement, in a hospice room. I don't want that. I just want to chill. Like, I just want to hang out with people who get it. Also, I don't only want to talk about my dead parents. I don't want to only talk about my grief. I want to talk about nail polish and Taylor Swift or whatever non-griefy things, though Taylor Swift is pretty griefy. Whatever non-griefy things are on my mind that day. I just want to be normal. And it's totally coming back to this exact point that we were making, that I am in my 30s and a griever. I was looking for just chill, casual spaces where I could do that. And I realized that such a thing did not exist, particularly in the South, where most grief support is religious, frankly. That was not what I
It's not the vibe.
wanted. That's not the vibe at all. And I had a feeling that I was not the only person that felt that way. We started hosting events through Grieve Leave, years ago when I started, but we started calling them sad hours last year because I literally texted people one day. Oh my God, it was just, another week in America where everything felt incredibly heavy. And it was a Friday night. And I was like, hey, besties, I'm just feeling really sad. Will you come be sad with me at this one particular bar that I love? And people showed up. We had like 15 people hanging out for our very first impromptu sad hour.
Sad hour.
And the idea took off from there. We have hosted sad hours all over. And the whole concept is just gather people together who want to come to a sad hour because they are self-selecting that they're grieving in some capacity and they want to just come chill. And like, that is magic. What happens when people get to a sad hour is they're like, so what are you sad about? Like, why are you here? And they talk about it immediately. There is no like formal programming necessarily. It is just that kind of authentic connection.
I was just going to say that it's so authentic. Like, it is not, because, you referenced this, and whether it's religious based or you're in the basement of a hospital or you're like, I kind of referenced, I would to that like hospice thing. Those are so, like, to me, and I get that they are valuable to some people. So I'm not like saying, everything can exist. But I would go to those and Brian and I would walk out and we'd be like so much worse than we walked in because for us, it was not healing to be in that very negative space and just one up each other with our grief. And, but if you want to, but that doesn't mean you don't want to talk about your grief or, like, hey, what are you sad about? Like, yeah, hey, I'm sad. I miss my son, Jake. He's been gone X amount of years. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be anything. And I also love that sometimes you just want to be in a space, and you sort of reference this, like, just because you're surrounded by other grievers or people there for the same common purpose, you don't necessarily want to talk about it. Maybe you want to be like, oh my God, have you listened to the new album? What do you think? Like,
but just the comfort of knowing that the space exists, just the comfort of knowing that everyone around you right now is there for a reason makes you feel less alone. Whether you outwardly talk about your grief or not, you're like, oh, right. There are other people who want to come to a sad hour because they're grieving something. We don't even need to talk about it. I feel better just having been here.
One of another guest this season, Jordan Sondler, she hosts like the Dead Parent Club. And our conversation was very similar to that. It's like the first Wednesday of the month. It is completely online. It is audio only. So like, she's like, some people
Interesting.
It's just this venue for people to pop on. And it's not, some people have been coming every week for years. Some people are in and out. She's like, some people have literally never missed, but I have no idea what they look like. They're just like a little icon on the thing. And she's like, but it's just, we come together. People say what they want to say. Sometimes people have a lot to say. Sometimes people just listen. Sometimes people have listened for years and then they are moved to speak. And it's just such I think there's so many different ways that we allow ourselves and each other to grieve now. And I just think it's so beautiful, really, to me. Like, it's beautiful to have these events that even though people are coming together for sadness, they're supporting each other. And,
it's pretty funny, too. There's a lot of laughter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like hard conversations that make you laugh, right? Like, it's just stuff that...
Oh, my God, totally.
They go hand in hand. I love it. I absolutely love it.
So you will have to come and we'll host one.
I think that'd be really fun, too. I'm not going to lie. So what are the next steps for Grieve Leave? Like, where do you see things going? What are your projects? You referenced a book. I think that sounds amazing.
God, I've been working on a book for a while, and now it is finally getting to a place where I feel like it could be ready for the world to see. That's memoir side of things. So that's kind of telling more about my story particularly from the intersections of my marriage and the grief that I felt for the deaths of my parents and what led to my divorce. But Grieve Leave continues to grow. So I'll tell you this, we're working on revamping our website right now because, we've just outgrown our website. It needs a revamp. There's not a sad hours page. So there will be a sad hours page, that kind of thing, because we will continue to host those. I continue to work with amazing workplaces across the world, globally, from banks to small companies to nonprofits, you name it, on training them to create more grief-informed workplaces. That work is deeply meaningful to me because de facto our workplaces are the front lines of grief support in America. And the more that we can do to train colleagues, to train managers on how to support someone going through a loss, I think the fewer people quit their jobs, the fewer people feel so overwhelmed by their grief that they feel like they can't function. So Grieve Leave will continue to do those kinds of trainings. I'm giving some big talks that I'm really excited about. I'm speaking at Endwell, which is a big conference out of LA that I highly recommend you live stream. If you can't make it out to LA, go look them up. You will love them, Heather. Endwell.org. They're amazing.
Okay.
And we're speaking at South by Southwest in Austin.
That's amazing. That is awesome.
In March. Yeah, it's going to be great. And then, my podcast is in its second season now. That is out. We have a new episode coming out every week. And I love this season. We just had an episode that came out that I was thinking about you about because it is about the intersections of grief and AI. And I know that we had talked in our last episode about, folks should go listen to it if they haven't.
Absolutely.
Just like the funkiness there. And so whole episode about those intersections
awesome.
and like ethical challenges.
Thank you so much for being on this show again. I love this conversation. And what I think is so powerful about what we just did over this last hour is when people listen, you have given these takeaways, these like nuggets that people can take with them to process their grief, to live with their grief, to find joy in their grief. Like, I think this is how we live as grievers. And I think that these examples and takeaways are so powerful. So thank you for all that you do on this front. And thank you for sharing it with my audience.
Oh, Heather, thank you. I am obsessed with you. I think you're amazing. I so happily said yes to coming back because I just want to talk to you all the time. So thank you, Heather. I appreciate you.
All right. And to Here's a Sad Hour in 2026, co-hosted.
Cheers. It's happening.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. I hope today's conversation brought you comfort, connection, maybe even a little bit of hope. If it did, I'd love for you to subscribe and share this episode with someone who might need it too. See you next time on A Place of Yes.